people is the increasing crucial role that global capital plays. The power of globalization played a big part in reviving New York's fortunes over the past 30 years and in preventing us from going into a downward spiral after 9/11. And our success story is far from being a one-off anomaly in this world. Just take a look at what India and China have achieved as they have become urbanized and more fully reintegrated into the global economy. What this tells us is that the world's cities emphatically do not need the restrictive new barriers to immigration or trade that many political leaders want to erect, especially here in the United States. The cities that hope to succeed in the 21st century cannot close their doors to the world's workers any more than they can close their doors to the world's capital or to the world's ideas. In New York, the free global movement of labor, capital, and ideas defines our character, underlies our prosperity, and explains our comeback. Sadly, some of our national leaders are turning their backs on this formula for success. And if they insist on turning away the best and the brightest and protecting jobs instead of promoting them, then I'm sorry, but I think the hard economic times that we are beginning to experience in the United States will be with us for a very long time. But the choice is ours, and every country faces exactly the same choice. Do we reap the benefits of globalization and address its difficulties honestly, or do we scapegoat globalism and turn away its benefits? I believe we should be working to bring the benefits of globalization not only to the United States, but to cities around the world where too many people remain isolated and impoverished, and something that the World Bank's lending policies certainly can help achieve. One of the benefits of globalization is the ever-freer movement of ideas, a trend that reinforces the second value I want to stress, the power of innovation. There are so many educated, creative, brilliant minds in our world today, capable of creating innovative solutions to many, if not all, of the problems that plague us. We must foster this spirit of innovation and reinforce it in every ways we can. New York and other cities, too, understand this. We are increasingly adopting one another's innovative approaches to our shared challenges, and this is especially true in two areas: reducing poverty and global climate change. In the U.S., we've been fighting poverty with pretty much the same arsenal of weapons for the past 40 years. And guess what? Not much has changed. And that's why innovation that promises to break this cycle of futility is so crucial. And so far, there's been precious little talk of innovation at the national level, in our government or in our current political campaigns. But the world's cities, including New York, aren't waiting for others to act first. Countries around the world, especially in the developing world, are experimenting with anti-poverty programs that smash taboos and turn orthodoxies on their heads, and some of them have been very promising results. And as Bob said in his introduction, New York has recently become the first U.S. city to adopt, on a trial basis, the kind of conditional cash transfers that have been successful in Mexico, Turkey, Brazil, and other developing nations. And I'm pleased to read the other day that Prime Minister Brown of Great Britain is now proposing a similar program for the United Kingdom. By offering conditional cash payments that can amount to up to 1/3 of household income, we hope to encourage low-income New Yorkers to stay in school, stay in their jobs, and stay on track to rise out of poverty. And for those that are skeptical, let me just point out that in the developed world, we use economic incentives for the rich and for companies to get them to do things that we think are in their interest and in society's interest. Using the same thing at the other end of the economic spectrum only makes common sense. It's worked in some places, and I have great hopes that it will work in New York City. Nearly 5,000 families are already enrolled in what we call Opportunity NYC. This program is currently privately funded, and if it becomes the success we hope it will, then we will invest public dollars in it. And that's another thing. Some of these programs require innovative solutions and independent sources of funds like the World Bank or private philanthropy to do the untested things. But that's what innovation really is all about. Innovation is about not knowing whether it will work, what it's going to look like, who will buy it, what color it'll be, how much it costs to manufacture. But if we don't have innovation, the society cannot continue to grow. The World Bank really has long been a leader in supporting conditional cash transfers, and I did want to thank its staff for working with us, as Bob talked out, in helping us design our Opportunity NYC, and that includes in particular Laura Rawlings of the bank's Caribbean and Latin American regional office. New York and other cities are also sharing innovative ideas about addressing an equally critical issue, climate change. Indeed, in many instances, cities are well out in front of their national governments in this area as well. For example, here in the United States, even though our national government has not ratified the Kyoto Accord, more than 700 American cities, including New York City, have pledged to meet its standards. And in the past year, I've met and talked with mayors of the world's great cities from London to Mexico to Beijing. We recognize, as New York Times correspondent Thomas Friedman has written, when it comes to climate change, it is too late for later. So we're not waiting for others to act. Increasingly, we're working in concert with one another and adopting one another's best practices in areas ranging from greening our streets to cleaning our air. New York's sustainability agenda, called Plan YC, draws on the policies of cities around the world, from Berlin to Singapore. New York City will expand and encourage that exchange of ideas when we host a major two-day international conference on climate change and urban air quality in New York in June. And the World Bank Group has shown its own leadership on climate change, starting with the example you've set by becoming a carbon-neutral organization. Now, your lending practices can support the world's cities as we find innovative ways to shrink our carbon footprints too. But to be effective, innovation has to be coupled with the third value that I want to stress: rigorous and publicly accountable governance. Governance that is transparent, governance that is efficient, and governance that makes decisions based on data. We have a saying, in God we trust, everyone else bring data. And I've found that in business and in government, these are good words to live by. In New York City, we've not only